First of all, you hear Senator McCain there saying we know where the majority of the chemical weapon sites are. Is that true?
I seriously doubt it, given that they've been moving their chemical weapons, as the administration has said itself, over the last few months. I think we may know where they were, and we may know where maybe a majority are now. But look, it's going to be up to the Syrians to disclose where they are and the amounts that they have and the types of weapons in each location, if this agreement is to work.
This may be a dumb question, but what does a chemical weapon site look like? I mean, are you talking about is it a rocket with a warhead on it filled with chemical weapons? Is it a warehouse full of chemical weapons? What does it look like?
Well, relatively little of it is actually warheads sitting on rockets or next to artillery shells or ready for aircraft, although there are some like that. Most of it is stored in fortified bunkers. Sarin is stored as two relatively harmless, innocuous chemicals that only become sarin when they are mixed together and only done right prior to use because it degrades relatively quickly. VX is more stable, lasts longer. Some of that may already be prepared, but most is probably in a binary form. Mustard gas is there. It's the oldest of the class chemical weapons, but also in many ways the most difficult to handle and dispose of.
Logistically, is it possible to safely secure chemical weapons in the middle of a civil war? I mean, how many people would this take? How many inspectors would this take? Do they need protection? What kind of an operation would this be?
To be quite honest with you, no one really knows. We've never tried to do that. Look, I led inspection teams into Iraq in 1991 in very intrusive inspections, but it was after Iraq had lost a war, but not lost the country. For a matter of weeks, Saddam cooperated with, and then they stopped cooperating, and we ran into rebuff after rebuff. But we didn't have other people other than the regime shooting at us. This is a situation very fluid. It's going to be very difficult to provide both the security as well as the technical issues of securing the weapons, monitoring them so that you're sure no one is cheating, no one's moving. And this is before you even get to the issue of how do you dismantle and destroy this a huge stockpile of chemical weapons.
Right, people say it's the world's biggest stockpile of chemical weapons Syria has right now. In terms of numbers of people involved, just to, as you say, secure the sites, we're not even talking about destroying the chemical weapons. Are we talking 1,000 people? Are we talking 10,000 people? How many inspectors?
Well, if the Syrians provide the security, the Syrian army provides the security, the outer security that protects the inspectors, you could do it probably, I guess I'd be comfortable with somewhere between 500 to 1,000. Look, you don't put a single inspector at each chemical weapons site. This is teams. And you also need the protective gear. Chemical weapon sites are toxic environments to go in. You inevitably have weapons that leak. So you've got to have that whole support structure that will keep you alive and safe while you monitor the weapons that you're supposedly guarding and keeping anyone from stealing.
You'd also, I guess, have to have buy-in from all the different rebel factions in order to try to ensure some sort of protection for these inspectors. In terms of actually...
Well, Anderson, let me just say,
yeah.
That's going to be probably the hardest task because we know that at least some of the rebel groups have historically, over the last 10 years, been seeking chemical weapons for their own use.
Right, you have these al-Qaeda affiliated groups that would no doubt love to have chemical weapons or any other kind of weapons. In terms of actually destroying these weapons, I mean, well, actually, before I get to the destruction of these weapons, just the securing of the sites, in a little bit, I just did an interview with a senator who was talking about giving some sort of ultimatum to Syria saying they have to provide access to these sites in a matter of days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Is that realistic at all?
Well, it certainly would be a realistic test as to the Syrian seriousness. The problem is they may well test our ability to follow through on it. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, in The Hague, does not have that many inspectors to do it, and they're doing other things.
And then in terms of destroying the actual chemical weapons, I mean, that's years, isn't it?
If you do it in a safe and responsible way, it's going to take a considerable amount of time. It took years in the case of Iraq. It can be done, but look, dissuade yourself from the idea that you're going to move these chemical weapons to some place outside of Syria. That's probably the least safe thing to do. And where would you move them? We can't even move chemical weapons in the United States from one state to the other because of political and environmental objection. No one's going to want to take a freighter out of Lebanon loaded with chemical weapons and sail it off somewhere.